This Red Sox offseason was looked at as one of the most important in recent years. But the big question is, was it enough?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Anzewski, and here, as always, with my co-host, Nessa's Lauren Willand. And I want to thank you so much, Lauren, for holding this podcast down over the last week or so. I've been in Arizona over the last week, helping out Bally Sports with the Super Bowl. But now that the winner has been revealed for the end of the football season, now it's time to start preparing for Major League Baseball season. Pitchers and catchers reported yesterday, and it's crazy to believe that baseball is finally back.
Yeah, it seems like I feel like this offseason flew by and went slow all at the same time. It's just there is so much happening so fast that there's kind of a lull there for a little while. And the Red Sox, they have finally got Rafael Devers signed to the extension. So I feel like a lot happened for the Red Sox. They did make a lot of moves out there, but overall this offseason, it was fun overall. It was a very interesting offseason for a lot of teams, and to watch a lot of teams continue to get better, and the Padres just continue to spend all this money that I don't know where they're getting was fun to a point. But it's baseball season now, and back in New England, it certainly feels like spring. It's been like 50 degrees the last few days. So it's definitely starting to feel like baseball weather too.
And, looking at the whole landscape of the major leagues, lots of teams, had a lot of big signings, big trades, and especially going into this Red Sox offseason, it was looked at as one of the most important for Chaim Bloom's tenure with Boston, and especially with them finishing in last place in 2022. Lots of question marks, lots of holes to fill. There's still a lot of what ifs potential, the word like that we like to use. And it's interesting looking back at all the different additions and subtractions that the team overall had and how much was really riding on this offseason. And after doing some reflection on everything that went down, I think obviously the glaring thing that people are going to remember from this 2022-2023 offseason is the Xander Bogaerts departure. And I feel like that it has a massive cloud over everything else that the team did overall.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, that was without a doubt Boston's biggest loss. And then it only got more amplified when Trevor Story's injury came to light. And we're not really sure how much time he's still going to miss. The good news is he's out of that massive elbow brace. So that's a good sign. But you just look back at the Red Sox, and it looked like they were doing good things. They signed Kenley Jansen and got fans really excited. Like, okay, like they're trying to be serious here. There were reports about Bogaerts being close with the Red Sox, or talks intensifying rather, but the loss of Bogaerts only became bigger when Trevor Story went down with his injury, and then all these moving pieces, all these depth pieces starting to get signed. So that was the biggest move of the offseason, both for the Padres and for the Red Sox. It was massive, massive loss for the Red Sox. Hopefully they can get by. They're going to get by without him regardless. But hopefully, moving Kike to short and kind of platooning at second base doesn't come to, bite them in the butt at the end of the day. But Trevor Story says he's going to play. I don't see why he wouldn't, even if the recovery time is 6 months. But you said it, a lot of what ifs. And we've talked about that. This team does have, here we go, the potential to be good if a lot of things go right. It's just all those what ifs surrounding these players that we don't know what we're going to get from them.
And, I'm happy that Christian Arroyo gets finally his opportunity to show what he has. Not so much of a utility player really anymore. Curious to see how much time they really do give him and trust that they give him at that second base position. How will they really use Mondesi as well? But, one thing to keep in mind, Kike Hernandez will most likely spend a lot of his time in center field throughout the World Baseball Classic with Francisco Lindor slide in at that shortstop position. And I'm very curious to see how much we really see of Kike at shortstop in the middle infield, especially beginning the season, especially with him not really having the ability to get used to that position with spending so much time in center field throughout the WBC.
Speaking of the World Baseball Classic, the Dominican Republic is just stacked. If I saw them,
Unreal.
if I'm playing the World Baseball Classic and I see them on the schedule, I'm like, nope, not even going there. That team is unreal, and it's just I love the talent they have on that team. But yeah, it does raise the question if Hernandez will be in center field for the World Baseball Classic. He doesn't have the full spring training to kind of get used to shortstop, but I still think that he's going to go right into the shortstop. This man's an incredible athlete, and we saw what he can do in center field when that wasn't even his position. Why he signed with the Red Sox, and all of a sudden he's like, be a Gold Glover out there. So I still think that he'll come right in and he'll be like, "Yep, this is my shortstop position. It's mine to lose this spring training." And he's going. I mean, he said in an interview recently, I can't remember where I saw it, but he was just like, "Watch me. I'm going to be fine. Like this is going to be fine." And that's the attitude you obviously want from your shortstop and somebody who wasn't supposed to be your shortstop. But I don't see any issue. I know that he's had limited time there, but I just feel the way he can adapt to the position he plays is really going to play in his favor. Like you just use the center field as an example. So I have a lot of confidence in Kike Hernandez, and maybe it's grown more over the days and weeks and months in this off season. But he's a competitor. He wants this team to win. And he was promised that this team would be better. And he, come hell or high water, he's going to make sure this team is better than last season. Even if it means 1 or 2 wins more than last year, he's going to be the reason this team is better.
I believe the interview that you were alluding to was the one on the Rose rotation, because when he was asked about that shortstop position, his comfortability at that spot,
Yes, it was.
He said just watch in October and November, sort of hinting to the Red Sox having a run, in the playoffs and being able to surprise a lot of people, and especially with that, the energy that not only Kike is going to bring, Yoshida is going to bring, Justin Turner as well. Curious to see how this team all molds together, especially early on in spring training, with a lot of players going from Fort Myers to WBC, and how that will really translate to the energy of the team. What tone will be set day one, especially with pitchers and catchers starting, just yesterday, and how will Alex Cora really be able to help ignite this team's energy early on to, really put those doubters to rest and really surprise all of Major League Baseball, that even though there was some departures and some question marks throughout this offseason, we need to really overcome that and be able to sort of find our way and our identity outside of Xander Bogaerts.
Yeah, and it's a big season for the Red Sox. Maybe this is a bridge year into 2024. Well, they'll be better, but you talk about setting the tone, and I think a lot of players, specifically the ones returning from last year, have a chip on their shoulder because of how last year played out, whether it was the season as a whole, their injuries, and everything that kind of happened last year. I think a lot of players are going to be playing almost with a vengeance. And I mean, it only goes so far. You're only as good as your weakest link, so they say. But you have Kike Hernandez. We keep going to him. I mean, I feel like he's going to have a huge season. Rafael Devers, of course, is just, I feel like, a lock to have a strong season. But you mentioned the newcomer, Yoshida. He already has a ton of eyes on him because he's one of the bigger offseason signings that the Red Sox made. They committed a lot of years and a lot of money to him without really knowing if this is going to pan out. So there's a lot of eyes on him. Justin Turner, he's 37 years old. What's he going to be able to do for this team, even though he has the resume that he could be a very, very good player? And we've seen that. We know he's a good player. And a lot of new faces here. I talked last week about who's going to be the leader. How are they going to mesh all together? And it seemed like last year there was, I don't know if it was a chemistry issue or if just no one seemed to be on the same page at times. And hopefully this year they can just get on the same page right away, like right now. Get on the same page right now while you're in Florida before you start playing meaningful games and regular season games. So there's a lot. Yeah, there's just what they have to set the tone early, because if it starts off like last year, we are in for another very, very long season.
And we've reflected a lot about what happened last year, but I think that point is very valid with not only having the identity, the leadership, but also just the groove. I feel like the team was never able to really get into a groove last year. Injuries, happening left and right, and especially when they had that player who was able to be that leader, that Kike Hernandez sidelined right away, then Chris Sale sidelined. And then, we sort of saw Christian Arroyo become sort of that underrated leader because he was sort of the one guy that was producing day in and day out offensively. And then, you had a lot of minor leaguers having to be slotted into that rotation. And so that's the one thing is I'm curious to see how this team is able to overcome adversity, how these new players will all be able to mold together. We're able to see a lot of different opinions, a lot of different players from winning environments, with the Kenley Jansen and Adam Duvall coming from the Braves, the Justin Turner coming from the Dodgers. Both of those teams overcame adversity, overcame injury throughout the last few years, and especially with these new faces coming in, being able to really help set a new tone, set a new identity for this team. And, the other thing that I'm very curious about is we saw a bolstered bullpen drastically. And, that's been sort of the talk of all these additions throughout this offseason. But how will that fully play out? Will it be as good as most people expect? And same with the rotation as well. You're putting a lot of stock into the bullpen, hoping that, it'll overcome sort of the limitations that the rotation might give you. But, it could either all blow up in your face or it could just be a massive surprise that nobody really anticipated.
Yeah, like we said earlier, a lot of what ifs. And this bullpen on paper, it looks fairly solid. They did a lot of work on that. They did bolster the bullpen. They got a legitimate closer. And we've said this before, that the offense has to give the bullpen the opportunity to do its job. If you're going down 5-6-0 in the first 3 innings, and then you're just throwing guys out there just to get this game over with or get them work, and you don't want to put them in that position and set them up to fail. So the offense has to do its job to be able to get this bullpen to show that it's a solid bullpen, because it looks like it is. And if you want to get Kenley Jansen his saves, you have to make sure that you can keep this game close, you can score the runs, to make sure that you have a cushy enough lead, or even not even a lead, but if you have a 6-5 lead, that you have the guys in your bullpen that you can go to, like him. It's 100% him. Let's get him in here. And I mean, we've talked a lot about Ryan Brazier this offseason and his ability to survive DFAs. And this is a huge season for him. Chaim Bloom has spoken highly of him. Ryan Brazier has come out and said, like, he made some adjustments from August to September, which we clearly saw in his numbers, but is that going to be able to translate to an entire season? This is a huge, huge season for him for a number of reasons. A lot of eyes are on him, and understandably so. But yeah, you look at the rotation, there's 7 guys fighting for 5 spots in this rotation. So you're probably going to put someone else in the bullpen. Who is the next addition to the bullpen? So there's a lot of pitchers here, and you can never have too much pitching. We know that, but it's very interesting to see how this will all play out come opening day.
Yeah, especially, we've talked about it with Paxton, how they stack up in the rotation, potentially long reliever situations. But we're going to start to look at more of your reactions from Twitter, grading this Red Sox offseason, as well as look into, what some of the other major networks graded these different Red Sox moves. But before we do that, Lauren just wants to take a second to talk to you about Built Bar.
I love Built Bar. I love Built Bar by now. And we've talked a long time about Built Bar. And if you're like me, you're on the go, constantly on the go. You work out, you need to go right to work. You just kind of need a snack for in between. Grab a Built Bar, because you get all the calories. No, you don't get all the calories. You get all the flavor without all of those calories that a candy bar normally gives you. They don't have that super cardboardy taste that a lot of protein bars kind of taste like these days. And the best part, you're probably thinking, how can they taste so good but be so good for you? It's because Built Bar and the Built Bar Puffs, all of them, every single flavor is covered in 100% real chocolate. So You get all the flavor, you get all the macros that are good for you. They fit every type of lifestyle, and they're only 130 calories. So you get all the taste, and you don't have to sit there and think, oh, how many calories is this? Because it's going to taste good. You're going to enjoy eating a Built Bar. And we have talked before about going to built.com and getting your box of Built Bars shipped to you. But now you can just go to Walmart, head to the pharmacy section, and pick up your box. Or if you're closer to a Sam's Club, head on over to there. They also sell them. And there's flavors for literally everyone. There's cookie dough, there's coconut almond, there's brownie, there's something for everyone. Even the pickiest eaters like myself, my favorite obviously is cookie dough. But if you have patience and don't mind waiting, you can of course go to built.com and place your order. But make sure you go to Walmart or Sam's Club so you don't miss out and just get your Built Bars right away.
Starting to look at some of the off-season grades going into the 2023 campaign. Bleacher Report and The Athletic both have the Red Sox in a very similar vantage point in terms of grades. Bleacher Report docked them a C. The Athletic docked them a C minus. In my opinion, I believe that first thing that we talked about when we hit record, Xander Bogaerts. That's the glaring thing that sort of clouds over the rest of the moves that the Red Sox made. In terms of, in my opinion, the landscape that the free agency market had with all the signings that were made at one given point during the winter meetings, where the Red Sox were pretty much interested in absolutely every single person that was docked a free agent, and were left with, in my opinion, a bag of a little bit of mediocrity. Weren't able to get some of those big fish with the question marks that they had, not only with Xander Bogaerts, but some of the starting pitching options. I still think that they made relatively good moves in terms of the players that were available. Not to say that they're not injury riddled, some unproven, some with a lot of question marks, but I still think that they deserve a B minus in my mind.
Yeah, it's not the moves they made aren't terrible moves. And you look at the moves they made, they were addressing holes that they have in their lineup. Were they the best option? Probably at the time that they made these moves, yes. But could they have done better throughout the offseason? Also, yes. It's difficult to grade. For me, I'm gonna go like C plus because there's still the Rafael Devers extension, great. Kenley Jansen, great. But there's still just so much what ifs. There's a lot that could go wrong. And yes, maybe me grading on not knowing how the season is going to go. I mean, that's how we do these kinds of things. But I don't hate the moves they made. I just think that they could have made better ones. I think they waited too long, and it was probably purposeful. I think they waited too long to get who they truly wanted or get a true impact player that they certainly could have had throughout the offseason. But they did get good players. But are they still going to be good on the Red Sox? You're throwing a lot of new guys here in this clubhouse. You're throwing guys in this team that are older, that are not in their prime anymore. They're no spring chickens, but they do have the experience, which of course you want coming into a new team. And I've said this so many times where I'm like, so many of these players would have been great 5 years ago. Like this team would have been sick 5 years ago with all these players on it. And they still can be good. We know they can be good. It just so much has to go right. And overall, the offseason, I don't hate it. I don't love it. And I think the C range is fair. So I'm giving them a higher C than the other outlets you noted. But I just think that there was room for a bigger impact player. And that's why I'm not going higher than a C plus.
Yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from. And, in my mind, I feel like a lot of more of the negative connotation in terms of the offseason, specifically with the middle infield position, especially with the massive question marks in terms of shortstop and second base. I feel like some people in their mind look at the Trevor Story situation and the lack for preparation or lack of willingness to try and fill potentially that void that the Trevor Story injury will bring. It is pointed towards the blame of the Red Sox. In my opinion, I think if this Story injury happened earlier in the offseason, we would have seen the Red Sox have a lot more push towards trying to fill somebody better than Mondesi, better than Elvis Andrus or Jose Iglesias, the other guys that are currently available right now. And especially with, the Xander situation happening when it did, in my opinion, most people's minds, not only fans, but I bet front office as well, expecting Trevor Story to be able to slot into that situation. And all they really needed was to get maybe one or two more guys to be able to bolster up the middle infield depth. I don't think that it was as much of a priority as it would have been if the Red Sox knew exactly what was going to happen with Trevor Story early on in the offseason. But I think, that is a very fair grade for them, C plus. I gave them a B minus because I couldn't go as far as a C, but I also can't go as far as a B as well. And I think that, fans have a very similar sort of mindset on this. We got Sammy James. He said C plus. Devers extension, great. Like you said, Lauren. Yoshida, I like, but we'll see. Bullpen looks solid. I think the general consensus is that this is likely a bridge year, but with outside chance to contend. Then we got Henry Thomas, C. He said C as a passing grade. I'd say that they're worthy of it at this point. Still have a lot of questions up the middle and some rotation wild cards. And we got Sco Dubs. He said C as well. Any offseason you lose your franchise player cannot be above average to me, but I love all the other moves. And then lastly, we got Holman _ Ron. He said C plus. I'd say if Kluber was an upgrade to a legit number 2 guy, an upgrade at catcher, and a proven veteran middle infielder, I could have got to be way too many what ifs and unproven guys that need to be significantly counted on. And I think, he brought up a great point right there. The Kluber being looked at as potentially the only singular addition that the Red Sox made to, in quotations, upgrade the rotation after losing Nathan Eovaldi and Michael Wacha. And it's pretty insane that the rotation was looked at as, outside of the bullpen, is the number 1 spot that the Red Sox should try and upgrade. And they really didn't do anything to upgrade the rotation, in my opinion, at all. Just expecting Garrett Whitlock to be what you think he'll be as a starting pitcher. Brian Bayo, expecting a lot from him coming into his second season. Also thinking that Chris Sale is going to be good enough to be an ace pitcher for a team that should be trying to contend, with all the question marks that he has, only playing 12 games in the last 3 years. And then also the catching position is, I think, one thing that a lot of fans have overshadowed as a potential glaring issue for this team, especially, with some confidence in Reese McGuire from last season's production after he got traded over, and Connor Wong as well. I think that is going to be one position that we're going to be talking about in April and May as a potential one that needs to be upgraded as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge position here. I mean, they're putting a lot of stock into 2 people that you don't really know what you're going to get from. You're putting a lot of stock in Connor Wong, and then Reese McGuire, like you said. We saw I don't know if we saw really enough from him to build a legitimate sample size, but it's just, I feel like we keep saying it's a big year for X, it's a big year for Y, and a big year for Z. And you could plug any player into that XYZ. And it's always, I feel like it's a big season for a lot of people. It's a big season for the Red Sox because so many people are counting them out. So many people are down on them. And even the people who are kind of on the fence, the Red Sox want to prove everyone wrong. They want to kind of have a 2021 season, a 2018 season where people were not necessarily counting them out, but in the postseason in 2021, the Red Sox, everyone's like, no way they get out of the wild card. Oh, okay. 1 game, anything can happen. No way they get out of the ALDS. Oh, okay. Well, no way they get out of the ALCS. They didn't, but no one expected them to go that far. And if they kind of want to have that same season, there has to be a lot of questions answered probably pretty quick. And I think that I talked about this last week, especially rotation-wise, pitching-wise, who's going to have a short leash, who's going to have a long leash, because someone like James Paxton, no idea what you're going to get from him. And you could make that argument for Garrett Whitlock just because he has not had the actual build-up to be a starter since he's been with the Red Sox, and he's going to get that this spring training. But does he have a short leash as a starter? Does James Paxton have a short leash? Does he even make it to opening day? Will he get injured? Will something happen? So it's just, there's so much there, and there's so much that positions could need to be addressed. I mean, you don't want to go into the trade deadline, whether you're way out of it or not, being like, okay, we need to address this catcher situation. And even though we probably wouldn't have needed to do that if we just stuck with our original plan last year, or just kept, our original catchers in Kevin Plawecki and Christian Vasquez, and dealt with Connor Wong, have him come up and see what we have for him. So that could just be, I hope it doesn't blow up in the Red Sox face, but could be a big year. Here we go. Big year. It's a big year and a lot of potential for a lot of Red Sox in 2023.
I think that's a good point too, and that's one thing that throughout the season, myself and I feel like other fans will start to gather a landscape of what the possibility of either a trade deadline sell off, or are they buyers at the trade deadline. And time and time again, we've seen whatever fans think that Chaim Bloom should do at the trade deadline usually doesn't end up happening. It's usually much underwhelming than most fans would like it to be. But I think that's a good point as well. And I brought it up last week, I believe, about how this team will really start off. What will April and May look like? We saw obviously the offense pretty much forget how to hit for the beginning of this past season. And I think especially if they want to start the season strong, start the season on the right tone, you really got to start out hot and sort of squander all the question marks that this organization and this overall depth chart has surrounding them. But going into our third and final segment, I'm going to look at and sort of recap some of the biggest question marks or that glaring needs for the Red Sox that we're going to be talking about leading up to this 2023 campaign. But before I do that, I just want to take a second to talk to you about FanDuel. So the midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat free bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores, and even threes drained. A lot of stuff going on in the NBA right now, especially after the recent trade deadline, seeing Kevin Durant in his Suns uniform, lots of other things to be excited about in terms of not only the NBA, but especially with Major League Baseball coming up very, very soon. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at bigger payout with same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's FanDuel/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And now going into this final segment of this episode, looking at and recapping some of the glaring storylines going into spring training. We're going to look at each of these a little bit more in depth leading up to the season. But the one thing that I sort of found very interesting is ever since Chaim Bloom got hired in 2019, it was all about getting younger, having sustainable and consistent quality seasons and winning seasons as well. And, especially with him bolstering the farm system, seems like trading away, some of the older players like Christian Vasquez, getting rid of Matt Barnes, getting rid of JD Martinez, trying to get younger. They actually got older this offseason. They could have one of the oldest teams in baseball this year, currently constructed. They have 13 pitchers expected to crack the roster at an average age of 31.8. And we've spoken about this, how the age could help in terms of veteran leadership, but also could really hurt them in terms of completely hurt in terms of injuries.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys that they've acquired this year, whether that's trade or sign, have had a lot of injury history, and not just, smaller injuries. Like, these are significant injuries that players have dealt with. And it makes you wonder if this is going to be a problem going into 2023. And even the players like Christian Arroyo last year, and even the year before that, has just been riddled with injuries and COVID. And other players on the team have dealt with injuries. Rafael Devers has dealt with injuries. I mean, everyone deals with injuries at some point, whether you're been on the team forever or just coming in. But you just hope that the players can stay healthy. And you really hope that this is not last year when the Red Sox had like 16 players on the IL at once, and go through that again. and dipping into your talent in AAA was not quite ready, but you don't really have a choice when that kind of stuff happens. So you just hope everyone can stay healthy. You hope that people put in the work in the off season and come to spring training ready to work and just try to stay healthy. Obviously, injuries are going to happen. Not all of them are avoidable. And sometimes, you have to just have that next man up mentality. But hopefully the Red Sox can avoid that this year. It's just, you look at all the players on there who have injury history and you're like, okay, like this could be a long, long season. But on the other side of things, they could all have healthy seasons and surprise
Mhm.
a lot of people out there.
Right. And luckily I feel like, especially with a lot of the depth pieces, not only ones that, people know who they are and know their names, guys like outfielders like Tapia, Alforo. I think a lot of the pitching depth players that we've seen the Red Sox sign to minor league contracts. If injuries do come up, we could see those guys fill in. Not to say that, it will exactly correlate to wins or really be able to help this team be successful. It's always tough with some of those unproven guys. But I think as well, two players that I'm very curious to see how they perform in spring training and how this potentially plays out in terms of their future. Jarren Duran, Bobby Delbeck. Very curious to see what those guys' futures hold. Thought that we would see them potentially get traded throughout this offseason. Not the case. We could see them start the season in Worcester, or maybe they could break out in spring training and find a way to crack the opening day roster. But lots of different question marks and storylines going into this Red Sox spring training. We're going to be keeping you posted 5 days a week leading up to the season. So make sure to subscribe to Locked On Red Sox, whether it's on YouTube or wherever audio platform that you listen to. And we thank you so much, as always, for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure to follow Locked On Red Sox on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. If you weren't able to let us know what your final Red Sox offseason grade would be, tweet us over at LO_Red Sox. We would love to hear from you guys. And we always try to, get the audience involved as much as we can to make this the most fan engaging Red Sox podcast that there is out there. Also, make sure to follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy, and also Lauren. It's la 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But greatly appreciate everybody as always, and hope everybody has a great rest of their day. We'll end this episode how we always end it. Keep the faith and let's go Sox.